My name is Evelyn Rhodes. I'm 27 years old, and what I'm about to tell you really happened to me last winter in a small coastal town in Maine. I didn't go there for thrills or ghost stories. I went to settle the estate of my late uncle who left me his cottage on the edge of the cliffs, but on my second night I saw a single lantern light swaying outside in the snowstorm. And that's when everything began. This story is written and edited by Dark Life Side Diaries. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share if you want to hear more true horror stories like this one. Snow had been falling for hours when I arrived at the cottage, my rental car barely making it up the winding road. The house was small but sturdy, built of weathered cedar with a wraparound porch facing the ocean. The cliffs dropped away sharply beyond the porch rail, the waves crashing unseen in the darkness below. Inside it smelled faintly of salt and wood smoke, though I couldn't tell when the fireplace had last been used. My uncle had passed unexpectedly, found in his chair by the window one morning, and no one in town seemed eager to talk about him that first night. I unpacked only the essentials, too tired from the drive to explore. I was halfway through making tea when I noticed a faint glow through the kitchen window, a golden light swaying back and forth, about 50 yards from the house. At first, I thought it might be a neighbor or a fisherman caught in the storm, but the light was too steady, its movements too deliberate. Wrapping myself in a coat, I stepped outside onto the porch, the wind cutting through me instantly. The light seemed to be moving closer, though I couldn't make out who or what was carrying it. "Hello?" I called, my voice whipped away by the gale. No answer. The snow crunched under my boots as I took a few steps toward it, my flashlight beams swallowed by the thick flakes. Then, without warning, the light stopped moving. It hovered at the edge of the cliff, swaying gently as if waiting. I took another step, and that's when I saw her, a woman in a long black coat, her hair plastered to her face by snow, holding an old-fashioned lantern. Her eyes met mine, dark and depthless, and she smiled slowly before taking one deliberate step backward and disappearing over the edge. My heart lurched. I ran forward, shining my light down the cliff, but there was no body, no footprints leading away, only the roar of the ocean far below. Shaken, I stumbled back inside, bolting the door, but as I turned away from the window, the golden light flared again, this time right outside the glass, impossibly close, casting a shadow of a tall, thin woman on the wall behind. I didn't sleep after that. The lantern light stayed at the kitchen window until just before dawn, its glow dimming only when the first pale streaks of daylight touched the snow outside. When it finally vanished, I collapsed into a chair, my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold my mug of cold tea. I told myself I'd imagined it, that the isolation and the storm had gotten into my head, but the feeling of being watched lingered, a pressure in the room that didn't lift with the sun. By mid-morning, I decided to leave the cottage for a hike. Few hours thinking the walk into town would clear my head. The path was buried under fresh snow, and yet as I stepped off the porch, I noticed a strange thing. A single set of footprints leading from the cliff's edge directly to my front steps. They weren't there last night when I'd gone to investigate the light, and they certainly weren't mine. My heart pounded as I crouched to look closer. The prints were too small for a man's, but too deep to belong to someone light. They trailed right up to the door, then stopped, no sign of them turning away. The locals at the diner avoided my eyes when I asked about the footprints, but an older man in a battered wool coat leaned close and said quietly, "If you see her light, don't follow. And for God's sake, don't answer if she knocks." His hand trembled as he stirred his coffee, and when I pressed for more, he just shook his head and muttered, "The widow doesn't like to be ignored." Back at the cottage that afternoon, I found the lantern on the porch. Not a photograph or a flicker of light, the actual object heavy and rusted, its glass cracked. I didn't touch it. The snow around it was undisturbed, as if it had simply appeared there. I shoved it off the porch with my boot, watching it sink into a drift, but when night fell, I woke from a doze to find it sitting on the kitchen table, its flame burning steady despite the fact that I never lit it. The smell of seawater filled the air, sharp and briny, and my ears popped like I dived underwater. Then came the knock, slow, deliberate, 3 beats that echoed through the cottage. I froze, remembering the old man's warning, but the knock came again, louder this time, followed by the sound of a woman's voice, low and lilting. "Evelyn, let me in." My skin went cold. I didn't move, didn't speak, but something metallic creaked nearby. I turned my head toward the sound and realized with a sinking horror that the latch on the kitchen window was turning by itself. The latch clicked open with a soft metallic sigh, and before I could react, the kitchen window pushed inward, just enough for the cold to pour in, carrying with it that heavy scent of salt and something older, almost metallic, like rusted chains left at the bottom of the sea. I lunged forward and slammed it shut, throwing the lock back into place, my breath clouding in the air as though the temperature had dropped 10 degrees in seconds outside beyond the frosted glass. The lantern glow hung in the dark, swaying back and forth, but now I could see her clearly, the same woman from the cliff, her soaked hair framing a face so pale it almost glowed, eyes fixed on mine with an expression that was neither anger nor sadness, but a kind of patient inevitability. She raised a hand and tapped one finger against the glass, slow and steady, as if testing it for weakness, and though her lips didn't move, I heard her voice inside my head. "You have something of mine." My gaze darted to the rusted lantern on the table, its flame steady despite the draft, and in that moment I knew she didn't want to harm me out of cruelty. She wanted me because the lantern had brought her here, and now it bound us together. I grabbed it, intending to throw it outside, but the moment my skin touched the cold metal, the room shifted around me. The kitchen dissolved into thick rolling fog, and I was standing on the edge of the cliff in a snowless night, the sea below black and infinite. Beside me, the widow stood taller than before, her coat streaming like kelp in a current, the lantern in her hand, now whole and gleaming. "You'll follow me," she said, and though I tried to step back, my feet found no ground behind me, only the drop. She leaned closer, her breath colder than the wind, and whispered, "Or I'll come for you inside your own skin." My vision tunneled the roar of the sea building until it became the sound of my own heartbeat. Then, just as quickly, I was back in the kitchen, the lantern still in my hands, but now glowing so brightly it cast long shadows up the walls, and those shadows began to move, not like light flickering, but like something inside them was trying to crawl free. The tapping at the glass had stopped, but I could feel her inside the house, now somewhere behind me, her presence pressing against my spine like a gaze I couldn't turn away from. I didn't turn around. Every instinct screamed that if I acknowledged her, if I looked, she'd have me. The lantern in my hands pulsed with heat, now burning against my palms, and the shadows on the walls were stretching higher, bending unnaturally, some forming the outline of long fingers curling toward me. I staggered backward into the living room, but the house had changed. The furniture was gone, the walls warped inward, like I was standing inside the hull of a ship, water dripping from the ceiling in steady cold rivulets. My boots sloshed through an inch of freezing water that hadn't been there moments ago, and somewhere beneath it something heavy scraped along the floor. Her voice came again, echoing from all directions. "You took my light, I take yours." I clutched the lantern tighter, realizing it wasn't just an object. It was a part of her, the thing that tethered her to this place, or maybe to me. I thought of the old man's warning, "Don't follow, don't answer." He hadn't said anything about returning what belonged to her. My pulse thudded in my ears as I waited toward the front door, which now stood wide open to nothing but black fog. I hurled the lantern into it, expecting it to vanish, but instead the widow's hand shot out from the darkness, seizing it, and as she did, her other hand closed around my wrist. The cold that poured into me was indescribable, like every drop of warmth in life was being drawn out through her touch. My knees buckled, vision dimming, and for a moment I saw what she saw, the cliffs on a stormy night, her own body plummeting toward the rocks, the lantern slipping from her grasp. As she fell, she had been searching for it ever since, summoning the last of my strength. I pulled against her grip, and the moment my hand slipped free, the house snapped back to normal. No water, no warped walls, just the quiet creak of the old boards. The door was shut tight, the lantern was gone. I sank to the floor, shivering so hard my teeth hurt, and through the window I saw the golden light drifting away toward the cliffs, fading until it was nothing but the faintest glimmer in the night. I left the next morning before the snow melted, locking the cottage behind me and driving until the ocean was just a memory. But sometimes on winter nights, when the wind rattles my windows, I see a glow far off in the dark, swaying, waiting, and I know she hasn't stopped looking. Thanks for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share for more real horror tales.